Okay, in this video we're going to talk about graphing lines, and we're going to be talking about what it means to be a function or not a function from graphing lines. But I added some extra vocab up here, so you'll know what all this vocabulary means by the end. So if you haven't watched my previous video, make sure you go back, because we're going to use that vocab too. So in this case, let's draw a coordinate. So here we got a coordinate, and well, let's draw some type of a graph on here. This will be a nice curved graph. And normally you have two things listed here. One is going to be x and one is going to be y. Okay? Nothing's changed. This is the way we normally would draw a graph. And remember from the last video that x has another name. It is called the domain. And the y has another name. It is called the range. Okay? So we have domain, we have range. And sometimes we use input and output. We have another name that we're going to add to it. Anything on the x-axis is known as independent. And the reason it's independent is because you pretty much get to pick whatever you want on the x-axis. That's what it means to be an x. So another name for domain or the x values is the word independent, which means that the y's depend on the x's. So we're going to call the y's the dependent. Okay, so these are our dependent values. These are independent values. So independent, domain, x, input, those are all the same thing. Let me go ahead and write input down here for you. Dependent, range, y, and output. These are all synonymous as well. So we have lots of different names. So make sure that independent and dependent, that's our new vocab for this lesson, that you understand that independent has to deal with the x's, and it will be on the x-axis, and dependent has to deal with the y, so it is on the y-axis. That's going to be really important when we do our lesson on stories, because we're going to be talking about independent and dependent. If you know that independent is on the x and dependent is on the y, then it will be really easy to make a graph. So please make sure you spend a minute and understand independent is on the x, dependent is on the y. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is the vertical line test, also known as VLT. Okay, vertical line test simply says for something to be a function that it cannot have a vertical line that touches it in more than one spot at anywhere on the graph. So remember, a vertical line is a line that goes straight up and down. That's a horrible line, so let me try that again. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so the idea is that I need to draw a vertical line, and if it touches at more than one spot, it is not a function. If I cannot draw such a line, then it is a function. So I'm going to just randomly put some lines here. That only touches at one spot, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. And the point is there is no spot that I can draw where one of these vertical lines will touch my original blue graph at more than one spot. If that is true, then it passes the vertical line test and it is a function. Okay, so a function is simply any type of a graph where when you draw vertical lines, you cannot draw a vertical line that touches the graph anywhere at more than one spot. If that is true, it is a function. Now let's look at some cases where it is not true, so you can see what not a function looks like. So here's a graph that looks like this. And when we start drawing our vertical lines, here it's okay, there it's okay, there it's okay, but as soon as we draw the line right here, it actually touches at 1, 2, 3 different spots. So this one line alone says that this is not a function. It only takes one line that you can draw to make something not a function. So the goal is to find one line. If you can do that, it is not a function. One of my favorite ones to look at is this graph. And that's something that looks like this. And then it goes straight up and down and goes across. And if you look at this one, if it's a function or not, most cases it's just fine. But there's one spot right here where it touches at all of these spots. There's an infinite set of points right here. And since it's touching at more than one spot right along this line, this is also not a function. So that's what the vertical line test looks like, and you can do it for any single graph in the world. There's no limits to it. So let's actually look at another type of graph, and this is called discrete. So the examples we've already looked at are called continuous graphs, and the reason they're continuous, actually I should have made that in blue. The reason they're called continuous is because they always are continuing. So a continuous graph is something that you can do this. You start at one spot, you put your pen down, you don't lift your pen up. Doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as you haven't lifted your pen up, it is continuous. Okay? But then we can look at it and decide, is it a function, not a function? And most of these cases, we're actually looking pretty good. But here's a big no-no right there, so this is not a function. But it is continuous. So continuous simply means that your pen never, when it's drawn, or whoever's drawing it, the pencil never is lifted off the page. So what would discrete be then? Discrete is a graph that is made out of a collection of points. So let's do another one down here. And I'm going to put some points on here. And we're going to do that point, and that point, and that point, and that point, and that point, that point, that point, and that point. Okay, so this is called discrete. Discrete meaning made up of points. Okay, so discrete means it is made up of a collection of points. And we can play the vertical line test game here. If I put a vertical line test there, it doesn't touch any points. That's okay. It just can't touch more than one. If I put it through here, it touches 1 point. 1 is okay. Just can't be more than 1. And it doesn't matter where I put my vertical line, this particular graph never touches more than 1, so this is a function. Okay, that does not mean that any vertical line test will automatically pass because it's discrete. I can draw plenty where they're not, so let me go ahead and give you another example. So let's look at this particular graph. Okay, so if I start drawing my vertical lines, there's many spots it's okay, but right here it's going through 3 points, and since it goes through 3 points, that is more than 1. So this is not a function. It is still discrete, but it is not a function. So remember, vertical line test means that you can draw no vertical line through the graph that touches more than once. Okay, you can draw no vertical line. I don't think vertical is spelled right. It's not spelled right. There we go. You can draw no vertical line through the graph that touches more than once. So if it's touching more than once, it is not a vertical. It fails the vertical line test. It is not a function. If it touches either 0 times or just 1 time, and that is it is a function. So going back to our original one, our new vocab was independent dependent. Remember, that's a new name for x and y. The vertical line test is what we were just doing to determine if it was a function or not a function. And then discrete or continuous are 2 different types of graphs we've looked at. Continuous meaning that you never lift your pen off, and discrete, of course, means that you lift your pen off and it is a bunch of points. If you have any questions, please make sure you ask.